everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Uncut Thread featuring Quilt Africa Tribe. My name is Cheryl Hills, and I will be having a discussion today with our guest regarding quilt kits and pre-cuts. And we're going to talk about the questions, are they shortcuts? Are they training wheels, or are they actually gateways to skills we might not have otherwise tried? So we're just going to have a conversation with our special guest. And our guest today is Ellen Henke. Very excited to have her. I'm going to give you a wonderful introduction of Ellen, and then we'll ask her to add anything that she'd like to her intro. So Ellen is a daughter, she's a sister, she's a great-great-grandmother, and she calls herself the chief family storyteller. And that really says a lot about her, right? She is now retired and has from a career in management consulting. And now she finally has the time to do what she wants to do. And quilting was clearly a part of her retirement plan. In her quilt world, she is a judge. She is the first vice president of the Carolina Long Arm Association. She's a member of the Quilt Alliance. She's a member of the Arts Council, SQOA, and our own Quilt Africa Fabric Tribe. She brings tons of wisdom, experience, a really deep love of storytelling, and makes and puts love into everything she makes. We're glad to have Ellen with us. Welcome, Ellen. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your quilting journey?
Thank you. Yes, I grew up doing all of the traditional hand art, including sewing. I have been sewing since I was 7 years old, and that is for over 70 years. Most of you could be my daughters and nieces. And I became a Brownie Scout here in the United States. And by the time I was 16, I was making my own clothes. In fact, I still have my first sewing machine my parents gifted me in 1966, and I still sew on it. One of my grandmothers quilted, she quilted by hand. Later on, got a treadle sewing machine. That was my paternal grandmother. And I hear the stories of my aunts of how they did it by hand with all of the old handmade things that they used. And the other grandmother bought an industrial Singer sewing machine that she never used. I recently inherited it, even though she's been gone for many years, and I haven't used it yet either. I'm going to wake up the ghosts of the ancestors and get them going.
There's still plenty of time to get that machine humming, that's for sure.
Thank you.
So to get started, I know we have a few people watching us. So what I'd like you to do is put in the chat, have you ever used a pre-cut of any type? And while people are putting that in the chat, for those of you who don't know what a pre-cut is, it is not long yards of fabric, but something that's been subcut into smaller units. You have a 5-inch square, which is called a charm square, and you can buy those in packs of 40 or 42 squares. Going smaller, you have a mini charm, and that's a 2.5-inch square. You also have what's called a fat quarter, which is just a 1/4 yard of fabric pre-cut for you. And you also have what's called a layer cake. Some people call them patty cakes. It's a 10-inch square. And last but not least is the jelly roll. And the jelly roll is a 2.5 by width of fabric strip of someone's entire fabric collection. So that's what a pre-cut is. All right, so Bob says he's used them. So today we're going to talk about what we like, what we don't like about pre-cuts. So I'm going to pose this question to Ellen. With all of these fabrics coordinated for you, do you feel that that's freeing for you, or do you feel that it's restrictive for your personal quilting journey?
Well, I will answer that question first in the neutrality, not myself, but I think that there are pros and cons of both. It depends on no matter what level you are on, how much time you have for a project. If you can create something beautiful, for example, a Christmas project, we still have a few days before Christmas, I would say yes, pre-cuts. Other a lot of people, it saves time, it gives you ideas if you didn't have any. I have been sewing and quilting a long time. I actually had a 1,500 square foot studio of my own before I downsized due to health 10 years ago. And I had a long arm, all the machines, all the stuff, and I had enough room to make my own pre-cuts and sell them. Now, because Miriam has a carefully collated group of pre-cuts, I love hers. Now, when other people select what their vision of how the jelly roll will be used, or the mini charm, or whatever they're working on, that that may not be what I had in mind or how it mixes in with mine. If you have a large collection of various fabrics, doesn't mean that you have a large collection. Me, I've downsized from living in 4,000 square feet to an 800 square foot apartment that doubles as my studio.
So
If I answered your question, I
you
like to make
certainly did.
my own pre-cuts mostly, but I do that ahead of time. I don't do it when there's a project at hand.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever mixed a quilt kit that you've gotten with pre-cuts with your own and used a little bit of what came in the kit and additionally what you wanted to add to it?
I always mix.
Great, great. Go ahead.
I was going to show you for example, or do you want me to wait?
No, you can show us.
Okay. This is one that it's actually an Underground Railroad quote story. It's original story, but I just recently showed this block on my own channel because it was a wagon wheel. The a wagon wheel, and I think Miriam can see her fabrics in here. This was a batik in the middle, and I fussy cut some of hers and mixed them in with a gold that I had, and I put them in areas that you would think that they all came together. You can't tell which were mine and which were her original package.
Very nice. It's a beautiful
Thank
piece
you.
there.
Thank you.
So when it comes to getting a pre-cut quilt kit, do you find the creativity in that kit based on the fabrics that have been chosen? Or does the creativity live somewhere else, not in the fabrics, but in some other story you're trying to tell with the quilt?
In my brain, in 77 years of life on Earth, I kind of know what I have in mind. And I love taking the collection that someone else has put together and put it with what I have in mind and seeing how it smurges together.
Okay,
I just
fantastic.
made that word up.
Someone will continue to use that word, that's for sure. So when it comes to a quilt kit and following along with the instructions, even if you've made changes to the fabrics that you're going to use. Have you ever changed the instructions or just not followed them and just gone on your own course?
Oops. Yes. I think the the very last project that we did together, and it was with a quilt designer. I can't remember the name, and the background was kind of a light color. When I put mine together and I changed it around a lot, I just felt the spirit hit me. And these are all Miriam's fabrics. I added a Kona black. Maybe this is not the one. No, this one, but these are her fabrics. It was a Christmas collection, but I changed it so that the background would be black.
Okay, very nice. And the result looks pretty good.
Thank you. It's on the Quilt Africa site when the whole collab was put together. When you go through and choose the names of who did what, you'll see there's one that's the background is clearly all black. That would be her.
Okay, before we go on, I have a question for the people in the chat. So a few people have said that they like using or they have used pre-cuts of some sort, charm, jelly, layer cake. Tell us in the chat whether you like them, you love them, or you just want to leave them alone. So Ellen, what
Yes.
was the first type of pre-cut you ever used? Was it a jelly roll? Was it a fat quarter? What was it that you used?
Well, you have to remember they didn't have all these fancy cuts when I started quilting. You kind of had to cut your own. In fact, for those of you who are new quilting, what a fat quarter is a half yard of fabric, which is 36 inches. And to cut it, you cut it in half at 18 inches. But what makes it a fat quarter is that is then divided down the middle, as opposed to a linear quarter of a yard, which would be 9 inches by the width of the fabric, which is normally in America 42 inches. So I would say that the first pre-cut I used would have been a jelly roll.
Okay. And what did you make with that jelly roll?
A purse,
Oh, okay.
a quilted bag. Oh, I wish I had brought that out here. Um, it was a quilted bag.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So when you used that jelly roll, was there anything intimidating about it or anything that gave you pause before you actually used it?
No, what I would say is my first one just happened to be a Moda batik. And the batiks, because they blend so well together, they match. You could almost like close your eyes and pull a strip out and mix it with any other strip. I would say if I had a jelly roll that had something unpredictable, I would either mix in a neutral, some type of neutral color, or my favorite black, or a favorite off-white. So or sometimes like a tea dyed something that I've made myself. I like to play around dyeing fabric sometimes.
Great. So Ellen is a teacher and she teaches all levels of quilting. She teaches beginning quilters as well. Have you ever used quilt kits or pre-cuts with your beginning students?
Yes, quite often. Because number one, I didn't want them in my class with a rotary cutter. Cutting with scissors would have taken too long. And in a beginning class, usually cutting is something separate. So to keep everybody safe, to keep my insurance under control, because I had a shop on my property. Before I moved back to Connecticut, I lived on a 4-acre mini farm in North Carolina, and I had 1,500 square feet set aside for a studio. So to minimize my liability and anyone's liability, I would suggest pre-cuts.
Okay. So what is the pre-cut that you most often use when you get your students starting the quilting journey?
Charm squares, because I like half square triangles. Half square triangles, commonly known as HSTs, can be used to make at least 20, 15, 20 different blocks. They can be paired with other fabrics. For example, this might have been a 5-inch charms that I pre-cut myself. This ended up being an orphan block that I just recently put some backing and batting on, and this will be a casserole pad for my sister Joanne Stevens, who will probably be in the chat. I haven't looked, and this will be one of her Christmas presents. But you can see the different batiks, how they blended and mixed together in the star.
Very
And
nice.
the 5-inch charms, what is a 5-inch charm and a jelly roll are each 2.5 inches if they're subdivided. So they mix well and match with other 2.5-inch blocks or squares, or even the layer cake, which is a 10-inch square, which cut in fourths equals 5 charms. For those of you who don't like math, guess what quilting is?
You'll thank your math teacher. So when teaching your students, do you find that they are intimidated in any way with the use of any of these pre-cuts? Does it scare them?
No, because I'll show them an art quilt of some type of that's made completely with scraps, just pieces of scraps that I pick up just anywhere, or something simple. Oh, for example, these are some little things I made for Christmas. Hi, Sissy. There's my sister Joanne Stevens. She came up. She doesn't usually do that, you guys. She doesn't even come up on my channel. And this is just a 5-inch square at the bottom. I think this might have been a layer cake that I cut in half. I mushed it way down on the hut, and I had a piece of scrap that I cut out a door, and this will be someone's casserole pad for Christmas. And then here's another one. I try to make it simple things in the beginning, and who wouldn't love one of these for a Christmas gift?
So is that something that you would introduce to your students? Would that be a
Yes,
project that they would use?
yes. Also, could I show you a couple of examples of what you were just talking about?
Sure.
This was actually, this is a mud rug, and this was a part of a panel. And then I had some scraps, some were crooked, some were whatever, and I just put them on the side. It was not 5 inches, it was not 6.5 inches. I made this mug rug 6.5 inches, and I kind of fussy cut it a little bit and added enough strips to make it the size that I want. And I made these to give as gifts. On the other hand, this would be a 2.5-inch jelly roll. This happened to be 2.5-inch jelly roll that I cut myself, and it was kind of matchy. And I had a bunch of leftover squares, and I put them together and made a bunch of them. I put different backings, and they will be a set or just mix and match, whatever I felt like that day.
So it sounds like it's open for whatever creative spirit you're in that day. Do you
Yes,
do you allow your students when you're teaching them to have that same kind of creative freedom with
yeah,
a pre-made kit?
yes.
And what
I
types of things
encourage
did they
that.
come up with?
I encourage that, and I encourage them to use 15 minutes minimum per day to do something. Why 15 minutes? Because even people who work get a 15-minute break. If they have pre-cuts already ready, they can go do something. They can sew by hand. There are lots of, they can make a fabric postcard, which is in America 4 inches by 6 inches, and you can sew pieces. If you have a piece of paper or something pre-cut to 4 by 6 inches, you can just kind of flip and sew. You can have a piece of batting, and you can create something with nothing.
So for your students, do you think that using these pre-cuts, does it build their confidence, or do you think it delays any kind of skills they may be developing?
I think it increases the skills because they know that somebody who knew a little bit more about quilting or had more experience put something together that would work, or they were totally crazy, one or the other, but they probably wouldn't be in business if that were the case. I think it would give them the confidence to try something.
So for an experienced quilter like yourself, do you think that quilt kits are worth it, or are they unnecessary?
See, all of the above. I think they're worth it because whether they fit in the collection of fabrics that you normally work with or not, they can be used for something, and it adds to your stash. You don't have to go looking for those things. Finding quality African fabrics is not a simple thing. When I first started quilting, I didn't have Quilt Africa Fabrics. I could get a yard of this, or it would be animal print. Animal print does not mean that it's a authentic African fabric that was created in somewhere in Africa and not in wherever somebody else created it. And I wanted to use authentic fabric for this is one of my very first quilts. I didn't quilt much. It's kind of a modified log cabin.
Mhm.
And I remember there was a store in the town that I actually live in now. And I just cut, and you see my square. I'm showing it because I'm actually embarrassed. Some of the squares, and I don't think I was using a rotary cutter or a ruler. I think I was drawing lines and cutting them with scissors. And I think that's why I love it. It's kind of wonky. They're not symmetrical. But as a quilt show judge, when we used to judge quilts, we used to look at the ones that were handmade, hand cut, not precision computerized everything on the back. And I just put together the few little African fabrics I could find with some tea-dyed muslin and some tan and put it together. And then on the back, all I had, or all I knew how to use at the time, was actually unbleached muslin. And this one was like circa 2003. And to show the difference in quilting and now, all of my quilts have mitered corners. My sister Joanne Stevens says, "Oh, sissy, you say it's simple. It's this, it's that." But I wanted to show you when I didn't know how to make mitered corners, I just put the I just put it on. I'm looking to see if I pulled it to the back or the front. Of course, now for show quilts, I pull them all to the back so I can hand sew and it's invisible. But this was all I could knew how to do. And I love this little quilt. And I still have it like 30 years later, but it's a mini quilt.
Does your sister quilt? Has she tried quilting?
She's there, ask her.
I was going to put her on the spot, but
Oh,
um, Joanne, can you unmute yourself and tell us about your quilting journey?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, well, my quilting journey started with my sister maybe hmm, about 8 years ago, and she challenged me to do something with this fabric. She says, I'm going to bed, baby. When I wake up in the morning, I want to see something. Well, it was like, I don't know what you're going to see, but I'll try to do a little something. Her granddaughter had entered a citywide competition for children. She was 8 years old. She created a beautiful little drawing that I really fell in love with. And I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. So I got out all these fabrics and I started just cutting them out and then putting them on the fabric. And it's like, you don't know what you're doing. It's like get a glue stick, put it down, let it go. And then there was another little thing that I created that was a face, and it's like, okay, well, do that. And then that progressed to doing an art quilt of my mom, which never got quilted, by the way. I'm still working on that. But then the coup de grace was a short while ago when there was a challenge given to me by her from Quilt Africa to really do an art quilt and complete it. It worked me, but I got it done. I was really happy with it. And I was really, when she said about mitered corners, I was really, really challenged with that when I went to a quilt shop and one of the women that worked there said, well, it's not that, it's really not that difficult, but then it's not that simple either. This is the way I do it. And then she said, well, get this book and it might make sense. Well, based on what she said and what the book said and what my sister was saying, it's like, ah, I don't think I'm going to do it that way. So I did it my own way. And it was so interesting because in order to display it, it's like, okay, you need to figure something out. So I looked at something on social media and they were talking about, well, you could make these little corner things and then you could stick a rod in there. And that's what I came up with. It's like, okay, so it was an interesting journey. I'm not really a quilter, I'm a glass artist, but I enjoy, doing handcrafted work. I enjoy working with my hands. I'm still on the fence with regards to, how far I'm going to go with quilting, but the challenge that my sister gave me really motivated me to, you know, do more. And I have loads of fabric, not only from her, but from just being enticed when I was in quilt shops to buy fabric that just sits in containers and waits for my sister to come back and visit and play with when she comes here to Arizona. But that's my story.
So do you think in your quilting journey and the challenge from your sister, do you think what it took to get a finished quilt top, was it challenging? Was it intimidating? Was it skill building? What happened along the way?
Let's say all of the above. I like a challenge. I really like a challenge. But given that I actually spent so much time auditioning, it really took away from the actual creative process. And if I would say anything to anyone that's doing any type of artwork, you really need to know that you just need to dive in. Don't let the intimidation or fear of what it's going to look like, how long it's going to take, uh, what else you might need come in the way of your creativity. I think that a lot of times people overthink, and I'm one of those people. They overthink what needs to be done. And at the end of the day, if you spend all of your time spinning your wheels about how do I do this, sometimes you don't get it done. You really don't. or you have to leave it alone and, come back to it later. But if you have time constraints, then no, you got to get on it. So just do what you do.
Do you think it would have been easier for you if you had started with a kit that had everything that you needed in it and
No.
you created from there?
No, no, I don't do well with kits. It's kind of like I like thinking outside of the box. I like being challenged. I know some people like kits. I've done needlework since I was in grade school. Our grandmother and mother had us crocheting and doing embroidery and tatting and stuff like that. So it's like you really don't need a kit, although there were kits available. We made aprons and things that were already printed out. But as I grew older, in terms of, thinking about how I create my art, it's like, no, I like the challenge of just, formulating whatever it is, the idea in my mind. I like sketching it out, which most people don't do, but I sketch it out and then I'll work from there. And for some people, sketching is an issue, but not for me. I enjoy it. So,
And could I say this?
Thank you, Joanne, for your journey and your artistic input.
yeah.
She
And
has quite a collection of fabrics, and she has, when I cut 5-inch squares, 6.5-inch squares, jelly rolls, I send some to her and I just leave fabric there. I don't take fabric when I go there for my staycations for a month and a half. I use her machines, her everything, and then I go home.
it's always nice to have fabric at the ready when you need it. And it's great to
Absolutely.
have a source. And I'd like to take a minute or two to talk about another way where you can have fabric at the ready and be able to create with the Quilt Africa Tribal Box, which is a subscription box that is offered by Miriam and Quilt Africa Tribe. It's a 12-month subscription box where you get a taste of everything Africa. You'll get in your box, you'll get a sample of fabric. Right? You'll get a yard or so of fabric, all different, great ways to sort of inspire yourself to create something. You'll get a book that will have stories and information and just teach you more about African culture. And you'll probably get some kind of a gift in these beautiful glass beads I absolutely love. The subscription box, Tribal Box, will be coming again in 2026. I absolutely loved 2025 box. I've gotten some beautiful fabrics that are hard to get, some batiks, some bazine, which is hard to source except for through Miriam. I've gotten some great stories, learned a lot. The fabric and all of the wonderful things that come along with the tribal subscription box, I've absolutely loved. So be on the lookout for the link to be able to purchase your subscription box for 2026 is coming. All
I
right,
say
Ellen.
something about that with the bazine. It's very difficult to find it. It was in the United States, and I had some fabulous dresses that I paid a fortune for, had them shipped over, and I'm sad to say I took the gale from most of them because I knew I could make a head wrap out of anything, and I took the gales and cut them up and pieced them for different quilts and special things because I was just so starving for some of the basil that you can now just get freely from Miriam.
So the boxes have wonderful surprises, and each month is something different. It's definitely worth looking forward to. So I know I've enjoyed mine. So, Ellen, we're going to move on to talking about the art that comes from using quilt kit or pre-cut. Um, does knowing that your quilt came from a kit, does that decrease its value as art? Do you even see it as art?
I just see it as another source.
Okay.
It's like you have a palette of whatever you have, however large, however small, whether it's yardage or mini charms, or scraps, just literally pieces out of your scrap box. I find that it all motivates me.
Okay. So you get to put your own spin on things, your own originality on things.
I
Um,
always
is,
did.
is that part of the process? Is it intentional or is it serendipitous?
It's serendipitous. My style, I can go out. For example, in life, I believe that I could walk out with the clothes on my back and survive. I could get a job, I could find some place to live, I could survive. You can give me a piece of fabric, a needle, a thread, I can make something. My sister, on the other hand, I go in her house, I love going in different rooms and finding her sketch pads, her doodle thing. She sketches every single day. Me, if I sketch, it's because I had to and I couldn't figure any other way to fit things together. And I was trying to pre-make some type of pattern of my own. I just jump in, swim. She's going to take swimming lessons and get in the pool one step at a time. I'm diving in head first.
So Ellen, I'd like to take the next couple minutes for you to show us some more of your quilts and just talk about the artistic style that you put in and if you used any jelly rolls or charms or layer cakes in the creation of your work.
Well, one I think you will find interesting. I will turn this around. I don't know if you can see my wall. There is a crazy quilt in the top. In the middle of each crazy quilt, you normally start with a 5 inch, a 5 pointed, some type of square, whatever. The center of each of those is an African woman. And then I went into a collection of different African fabrics. There is some crochet of my grandmother's, buttons, beads, some hand embroidery, some trim that you might find anywhere along the street, beading, all kinds of stuff. That's one where I just mix, and it even has like the traditional fan sort of in the corner. I did not do what's considered part of a jelly roll quilt. I did not put a spider on there. I don't like spiders, so I didn't do that. And I will show you an example of something that's part of my sister's because this is an art quilt that when I was in Arizona this year for a month and a half, I straightened up a piece of fabric. This piece is called Sissy and Me. My sister, since my mother brought her home from the hospital, calls me Sissy. And I straightened up the fabric, and it was this little piece here. It's not straight with these two women. And I just kept adding pieces out of her scraps. And with her permission, of course, they're all tiny, tiny little pieces in this art quilt. There's a jinka symbol over here, which is the symbol of love. It's just a bunch of stuff thrown together. There were some hunters, some African hunters on one block, and I wanted to make sure that they were aiming their arrows towards the tree. And I use lots of animal prints and the zebras over here. This is a type of, and a beginning quilter can do this. This is actually a piece of double-sided pre-quilted fabric. And I did a challenge on my YouTube channel. And if anybody wanted to see it, they could just put my name in. And I made a template of a woman's face. And these were not jelly roll strips. These were pieces of fabric, but you could use jelly roll pieces. And I just cut them out. I did it live on there. This was an old earring of mine that I bought. It didn't have, it was supposed to look like a pearl. It didn't, it came off. So I just stuck it on there. My sister asked why I made green lips because I wanted to. It was my piece. That's why I did it. That's how I do most things. But something just like that. And then the two ladies that were on my live stream that day, their pieces looked absolutely nothing like mine. Now, I sent them the template, which was just the face. But I truncated mine. I cut off like below the neckline, one because we were challenged by time, because we were doing it live. And we ended up doing a second live stream so that we could finish it, or at least I could finish mine. But I would like to encourage people that don't sew. This is something functional art. What
So
is it?
Ellen, before I'm sorry to interrupt, before you go on to that piece there,
Yes.
talking about your live and having a challenge where people are making the same item,
Yes.
but they look completely different.
Yes.
Where in there does the art lie between everybody trying to make the same thing, but they never look the same?
That was the art. Because even if you were making, say, a traditional quilt, I have been in quilt guilds where we all selected the same pattern. We all selected our own fabrics. We made the same thing. And even if we made it exactly like the pattern said to make it, none of the quilts looked alike because of the different selection of fabrics. For example, if you want to contrast something, you put light next to dark if fabrics. If you wanted to kind of blend in, you put medium hued fabrics together. And it always fascinates me to see what other people made. My sister did the last quilt challenge for Christmas with what was it? Sissy, the art quilt, and hers looked nothing like mine. I don't even remember what mine looked like. I'm not sure if I finished. Yeah, because we had to finish it. I have a lot of unfinished things. I love picking the fabrics, putting them together. After that, the quilting part, I could care less. And especially now that I don't have a long arm machine anymore. I did buy a Cutie Breeze recently, which is a type of a frame that you can put a domestic machine on, and it has handles and you can move it around. And I had enough room to fit it in this apartment that I live in now. But for others who would like to give something with African fabrics, this is one of my most popular items. It's a neck bone pillow that I connected a strap on each end, but it's so therapeutic. It is so therapeutic. I always put a little patchouli oil if a person is not allergic to essential oils or something, and it's so comforting, and it does support your neck, back, or whatever. And I encourage people who just start, make something that you can give to someone. Make something that is simple to make. I This is just some fabric that I was going to make. My grandson went to USC. These colors were similar. I started making a quilted journal. I mean, a fabric journal by just putting fabric on a composition book. I put a pen pad and a page holder on it. You can use what you have. You can piece fabrics together. to do that. I'm going to go to one because I know we have limited time. This is a quilt that's really funny. I was in Arizona and my sister and I like to antique. We went to a quilt shop and they had this ugly fabric. Can you see the red and yellow and green?
Yeah.
The red and yellow and green. Do you know what they are? They're frogs. My sister was like, "Oh God, that's creepy." Oh no, sissy, don't buy that. Well, we went home that night. I couldn't sleep because you can tell in printed fabric here in the States if it's good fabric. It has those little round circles that you see on the side. If it's gone through the printer like 3 or 4 times, you'll see 4 round circles. If it's gone through 20 or 30 times, you'll see all the different circles to get the different colors of the prints. Well, I went back and I bought all 15 yards of that fabric. And I paired that with just some fat quarters of different fabrics. And look at this amazing quilt. It was actually a
Wow.
mystery quilt. I didn't know what it would look like, but it's got a lot of those little green and yellow frogs everywhere. It's like, who'd have thunk it? This is actually a really, really nice quilt made out of ugly fabric. Mitered corners. I say that to say what? It doesn't matter what you have. You can make something out of it. Even if you think it's ugly, someone else will think that it is beautiful. Okay.
I have a quite before you show your next one, I have a question for you. If you
Yes.
were to give your students a stack of pre-cuts, maybe give them a jelly roll and some charm squares and maybe a fat quarter, how would you inspire them to be creative with those pre-cuts that you just laid in front of them?
I would ask them what they wanted to make, first of all. If it were something like a casserole dish, something small, I would encourage them to use something using as many fabrics as they can. Like a challenge, how many of these do you think you could put together and make something? Again, I love to challenge them to use half square triangles because they can be arranged in so many different ways to make things, or compare, put them in squares, put them in, if it's a collage, encourage them. For people who don't want to sew, they can use some type of adhesive, double-sided heat and bond or something, place it on a batting and then heat press it and then just go over it with a machine to set it.
So, what words of encouragement would you give them to make that process not so intimidating?
Just do it. Just there's nothing you can do that's wrong. Our grandmothers back in the days didn't have all these fancy things. It's like we have too much stuff. It's like we have too many devices, too many rulers, too many kinds of thread. I remember Daddy telling me he grew up in the South and his parents were not rich. His parents were farmers. And his mother would tell him, Joseph, go to the store and get a size number 8 quilting needle. And a quilting needle, for those of you who put the thimble on, you go up and down. It's not, you don't use your wrist, you're like using your finger. My grandmother always had an apron on and she always had a thimble around. She always had a thimble. That's what she had. Sometimes the lady that I first learned how to do some quilting, I've always known how to sew, but it's not a quilt unless you have the 3 layers, and it's a quilt sandwich. You have to have a top, you have to have batting, and you have to have a backing. And I have 2 remaining aunts, and they tell me how my grandmother used to use the dining room table, and then the aunt and another cousin would sit there, and they had like a stick rolled up, and they would roll up the edges of the quilt, and everybody would be sewing on it, but there was only one thimble. So if somebody came to the part where it had several thicknesses, they would go to there. I have personally seen quilts that didn't have batting. They had the cotton balls from the field with the seeds still in it.
Okay.
My grandmother's quilts down south were heavy. They were the rolled out cotton that if you were in the bed, you had to roll the quilt back, turn over, and pull it back up again. They were nothing like what we use now. It's like we almost have too many options, and everything was done with like a white thread or an off-white thread. Those of us who have been quilting a long time, I mostly use off-white or titanium gray in all of my machines, unless I'm doing something really, really, really special that I want it to blend in. But like, for example, one of my friends was really good at applique. She only used off-white. I don't care if she was sewing black. It's like you're looking like, oh my gosh, I'd be afraid that some of the off-white would be showing. It never showed. Her quilts are amazing.
So I'd like to go back for 1 second about your grandmother's quilts. Did your grandmother ever use feed sacks or
I have
so
feed
you
sacks
could
left.
almost consider that as a pre-cut of its day.
Yes. My other grandmother, my maternal grandmother, used to take feed sacks. Feed sacks, for those of you who don't know, are what feed came in to feed your animals. And in the old days, they were made with cloth. Now they're commonly made with a type of fiber that's woven or plastic. I wish I thought to bring one out. I actually make feed sack bags, the plastic ones or the cotton ones. The cotton ones are hard to find and they're very expensive. You wouldn't use it in a bag. It would cost more than you probably sell the bag for, and then you've cut it up.
So your grandmother was really the first, almost one of the first forays into using fabric scraps, but that came in a shape already that you turned into a quilt.
Yes, that's what I sometimes forget what I'm saying. Keep living, y'all, and get old. My maternal grandmother used to bleach the flour sacks, sugar sacks, and then she would embroider them and make beautiful, fabulous pillowcases. Joanne and I both started needlepoint, sewing, embroidery before we started school, because when we started school at 4 or 5 years of age, we were required to be on the honor roll and to study all the time and do chores. There was no time for the hand arts because you had to live.
Do you have a few more quilts you'd like to show us?
Yes, I do. This one I have been working on for 20 years. This is the Electric Lady. And the middle part is tiny, tiny, tiny petty point, needlepoint. And I did the center. Then I finally found some batiks and I put some little glossy lipstick on her. And then I big stitch quilted it to show what it could be. I really intended this to be an art quilt. And then as an ode to some of the old days, they didn't always, the quilts then were to keep the children warm in the households of my family. So there wasn't time for all these tiny 21 stitches per inch. What? You better get that quilt finished and get it on the bed. We're expecting a frost tonight, Joseph. And they used to tie the quilts. So as an ode to tying the quilts, in the center of here, I put some embroidery floss and a tie, but I meant for it to fit in. So, I mean, to blend in. It's only like somebody that saw the exhibit up close that would see that it was actually just texturally different. This one were some more scraps from Arizona, and this one's called The Sun Rises in the sun rises in the east. Why? Because I was in Arizona when I made it, and this one little piece of fabric was such a bright yellow, I thought it would be the sun. Then this mask, when I first did this was literally scraps out of her scrap box, out of some of her matchy stuff. And then I threw some orange in it and some red in it. And but this mask, when I turned it, this is the way I intended it. But when I turned it upside down, I realized that the mask could be any direction. So since the sun was so bright in one corner, like the sun coming out, I asked some of the people on my channel which way they liked it, and I decided to put it this way. Then I fussy cut some crowns and put it on it in zigzag crazy colors that nobody in their right mind would put together, and then some animal print binding. And that was just something this year that I did create and finish. I was waiting. Did you have a question?
I didn't. Go ahead. Do you have another quilt to show us?
Yes. This one is, you asked me about something that could be done with pre-cuts. I actually made a set of pre-cuts for my quilt guild when I was in the long arm quilt guild, and each of us had the same exact pattern, and the only instructions were we had to put the red dots, the red squares in the middle. And this was called Texas tomahawks, but the batiks could be put together any way that you wanted, and it had a black background. This is a way that you could mix and match pre-cuts so that you can use a traditional pattern. You can put your fabrics in any way that you want, and you didn't have to have, we all put a black background in because the guild agreed to that. It could have been off-white, it could have been any color in the background. But this is a way that, especially the African pre-cuts that are lots of different colors, you can incorporate them into traditional quilts by using the same exact manner. And then I long arm quilted it. You can't even see it. I think I used variegated threads, but again, I just wanted it to fit into the background, and the little scraps, because we use a fat eighth, which is half of a fat quarter, and what I had left is what I used to make the binding, and the little hand stitches that I put on the binding in the back. And of course, with a fancy quilt guild, I had to put the mitered corners in. We all did. This was actually one of my show-off quilts with all the quilt rules. There's a quilting group online in different groups. It's called the I Don't Care Club. When you're making a quilt because you want it for art, you want it to feel good, you want it for the artistry in it. Stop, Hershey. And we don't care what the quilt judges rules are. You just want to do it for you. This was not one of those. This was one of those. I played by the rules that day.
So we have time for you to show us one more quilt. What would you like to show us?
Okay, this one is very interesting. This was a piece of imported, well, both of these, all three of these were imported pieces of fabric. These are actually beads. I believe they're glass beads, and they were hand put on this background. And I had this that was hand pieced in some country, and it was gifted to me. I added the cowrie shells and putting shapes together. I said, this reminds me of an African hut. I took pieces of all kinds of African fabrics, as you see, and I put a star over the doorway and some soil, and made this into an art quilt. Some of the pieces were not straight. Then after I made it, it was kind of small and it didn't hang well. So I just made these kind of straps to hang down. And I put a hut on the back. This was some embroidery from my embroidery machine. I do have one. And this is called The Village of My Familiar Afro Modern Art Quilt. Artist Ellen Pankey, 17 inches wide by 20 inches long. I put on my quilt labels the size of my quilt in case I ever want to show it. I know how much space it will take wherever it's going.
Well, Ellen, I want to take
Yeah.
a moment to thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for allowing us to see your quilts. I want to thank your sister, Joanne Stevens, for letting us in a little bit of her quilting journey, her artistic journey. Ladies, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Now, whether you like quilts, you love using pre-cuts or kits, you want to avoid them, or you fall somewhere in between, Ellen reminds us that quilting isn't about just doing it the right way. It's about doing it your way. So in your quilting journey, make sure you just do it your way. Kits and pre-cuts don't define your creativity. You and your choices do. Thanks again, ladies.
Can I
Ellen,
say
one more thing?
one quick thing? Yes, finish is better than perfect.
Absolutely, yes. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. You can find Ellen Pankey on her YouTube channel. Be on the lookout for Quilt Africa Tribe email for the 2026 Tribal Box. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great afternoon. So
Thank you
long.
for having us.